Welcome back, 8th graders. I am incredibly excited to be your guide for today's lesson because we are launching into a truly fascinating textual investigation. We're looking at one of the greatest historical and theological mysteries in the Bible, the Abraham mystery. Today, we're exploring the dynamic relationship between faith and action. We'll be doing some serious academic detective work, putting two different passages of Scripture side by side to see how they interact and what they teach us about living a life that actually pleases God. So grab your notebooks, focus your minds, and let's jump right in. Right off the bat, I want you to think critically about this question. Is it enough to just say you believe? In your real everyday life, what does belief actually look like? Think about it like this. If I tell you I believe a chair can hold my weight, but I absolutely refuse to sit in it, do I really believe it? Or am I just saying words? That's the core challenge we're tackling today. We're going to examine whether true faith can just live quietly in your head or if it demands something far more radical and visible from you. Section 1. What is true faith? To define true faith, we aren't just going to look at a dictionary definition. We're going to examine a prime historical example, a man whose belief literally changed the course of history, Abraham. By looking at his life, we can discover the exact anatomy of genuine, life-changing faith and see exactly how God views belief. This brings us perfectly to our memory verse of the day, Romans chapter 4, verse 3. It says, Abraham believed God and it was accounted to him for righteousness. The Apostle Paul is teaching us something profound right here. He's pointing out that Abraham's right standing with God started with one simple thing, belief. It was accounted to him, meaning it was credited to his account, because he simply took God at his word. And what's absolutely crucial to understand is that this happened long before Abraham followed any outward religious rules, like circumcision or the works of the law. His righteousness started purely in the heart, with unwavering belief. Section 2. The James and Paul mystery. All right, here is where our investigation takes a major plot twist. We have Paul telling us in the book of Romans that Abraham was righteous because of his faith, absolutely independent of his outward religious status or works. But as we continue our biblical studies, we run into a teaching from the book of James that, at first glance, seems to throw a massive wrench into everything we just learned. We are going to practice a vital academic skill right now, comparing texts side by side. On the left, we have Paul in Romans 4 emphasizing that faith alone was accounted for righteousness. But on the right, we have James chapter 2. James teaches that Abraham was justified by works when he offered his son Isaac on the altar. Listen closely to the contrast there. Paul focuses laser-like on faith and belief. James focuses heavily on works and actions. Which leads us to a pretty bold question. Do Paul and James contradict each other? As 8th grade scholars, I want you to pause right here and critically evaluate these two scriptures. If Paul says it's faith and James says it's works, is the Bible making a mistake? Are these two early church leaders fighting? Or are we perhaps missing a deeper, more profound layer of truth? The tension between these two ideas is exactly what we need to resolve to truly understand today's lesson. Let's resolve that tension right now in Section 3, Faith Completed by Action. So, spoiler alert, the crucial point is this. These two texts do not contradict each other at all, not even a little bit. Instead, they fit together perfectly, like two halves of the exact same puzzle. See, Paul is correcting a very specific error, the false idea that you have to perform outward works of the law, like circumcision, to be accepted by God. But James is answering a completely different question. How do we know if the faith Paul is talking about is actually real in the first place? And our bonus verse, James 2:22, answers that clearly. Do you see that faith was working together with his works, and by works, faith was made perfect? The word perfect here just means complete. James is proving that true faith doesn't just sit alone in the dark. It's made complete. It's made alive through our obedience. Paul rejects works as the root of your salvation, while James fiercely demands works as the fruit of your salvation. They are working absolutely together. Let's break this core lesson down into a really memorable three-step formula. I want you to commit this exact progression of genuine faith to memory. Step 1, a person believes God. That is the internal trust that Paul highlighted. Step 2, that belief leads them to surrender their heart and their will to God. And step 3, they respond in outward obedience. That's the action James was highlighting. You literally cannot have true biblical faith without all three of these steps firing in sequence. Which brings us to Section 4, the ultimate evidence. We've talked deeply about the theology and the text, but how did this three-step formula actually play out on the ground? Well, it played out in how Abraham physically responded to what God commanded him to do. Faith is looking at the stars. Obedience is taking the footsteps. Remember when God told Abraham to look up at the night sky and promised him his descendants would be as numerous as those stars? Abraham believed God right then and there. But his miraculous story didn't end with him just staring up at the sky, mentally agreeing with God from the comfort of his tent. No, he had to pack his bags, he had to travel into the totally unknown. Later, he had to take his beloved son Isaac up a mountain. He took actual, surrendered, dusty footsteps of obedience. So why is Abraham's obedience important evidence that his faith was real? I really want you to reflect on this for your own life. If Abraham had just said, "I believe you, God," but then completely refused to move his feet when God said go, well, his faith would have been entirely dead. It's like the chair we talked about earlier. A living, breathing faith fundamentally requires an outward action. The footsteps are the absolute proof that the stargazing belief was genuine. Let's move to our final section, the godly learner. Now, we are going to pivot from Abraham's ancient history straight to your daily life right now, today in your own academic journey. Because the truth about faith and action, belief and obedience applies just as powerfully to your education as it did to Abraham's epic journey. At HeroesMart Academy, we intentionally intertwine biblical morality with your education. You might wonder, why do we do this? Well, because education without morality can actually hurt you and the people around you. Think about it. If you only gain knowledge, you just become more capable. But capable of what? Intelligence without a moral compass can lead to terrible, destructive decisions. We want your intelligence to help you make wise, God-honoring choices. Your academic excellence must always be paired with right, obedient actions. We anchor this entire godly learner philosophy deeply in Scripture. Just like Paul and James guided our understanding of Abraham, Paul guides our understanding of the mind here in Romans 8, verses 6 and 7. He writes, "To be spiritually minded is life and peace." As you study math, science, history, and literature today, I strongly encourage you to keep your mind centered on God, on truth, and on biblical wisdom. Because when your mind is spiritually anchored, your academic capabilities become incredibly powerful tools for life, for peace, and for righteous choices. So I'll leave you with this final provocative question. What will your footsteps of obedience look like today? You've learned about Abraham. You've seen the mystery of Paul and James resolved. You've seen that true faith absolutely requires action. And you know that your growing intelligence is meant to honor God. So how are you going to translate today's learning into tangible, real-world action? Don't just look at the stars today and nod your head. Take the footsteps. Have a fantastic day of learning, be a godly learner, and I'll catch you in the next lesson.